Welcome. Thank you guys for making the trip here. We're going to start with some introductions. I'll introduce myself. We'll introduce our new members and then setting members. My name's Levi Kramer. I represent Ray, Colorado. We are clear out on the Eastern Plains. We're a 1A football school. I've been the head coach there for 20 years, and I also serve as a superintendent. And this is my 11th year as a superintendent for the district. So our new members, Eddie McGee from Vista Ridge. Nice to meet you, Eddie. Brian Christensen from Akron will not be here. He is in his retirement month, so Para wouldn't allow him to be here, but he'll be back. Jeremy McCormick from Delta. Nice to meet you, Jeremy. Zach Lemon from Eaton. Zach. Lon Gomer from Levita.
Here.
There we go. Does everybody know each other in the room? Do we need to go around and with a quick introduction?
You want to do roll and we can just go that way?
That'd be perfect.
Levi Kramer,
Here.
Greg Hawkins,
Here.
Josh Vidopondo,
Here.
Mike Hughes,
Here.
Paul Jefferson,
Here.
Reed Dowdy,
Here.
Here. John Heath, Ron Scrivick, Wes Mock, Brian is not here, Eddie is here, Jeremy, Zach, and Lon is online.
Here.
Okay.
We'll do the
Guests Harrison Chisholm. Will probably be
I don't
online.
know if Harrison is here, so.
John Conklin and George Demetrio. Hayden. And then Adam Baumgartner will be logging on shortly. All right, it's everyone.
Okay, just as a reminder, kind of the role of this committee for the new members and setting members, our job is to give our opinions to the clock committee and all of those. We're not making major decisions. We're just giving them what we believe is best for football. So all of those discussions will be centered towards that. That being said, if you've looked at the agenda, is there any agenda additions that we need to add that anybody would like to talk about?
I have something.
Yes.
We could start the discussion on teams that dropped their varsity program and come up with some processes or guidelines for them to be reinstated as a varsity program. We've just had some situations in our league where we've got teams that have only played twice in 5 years. And it really affects the league and the scheduling.
Do that as a motion?
No, we can just add that to the bulletin items. There's no proposal with that, so we can start the discussion, and then if this is something that a proposal will come out of, is something we can take a look at for next year. Just come with a proposal and we can go that route, but we can have that discussion started today.
John, honestly, are we gonna talk about? Are we gonna talk about the tiebreaker process? Like in leagues, if leagues are.
No, that typically is up to the league. Our bylaws I believe it says that the leagues are responsible for coming up with their own tiebreakers. It's not necessarily, we can maybe come up with a recommendation that leagues can use, but it should be up to the league versus us.
I think, in my opinion, it would be good for us to give some forethought into with kind of us creating some leagues or having that, like, not allowing two leagues to have different criteria in the same classification seems to be kind of a strange thing. When we help create those, I think maybe some guidance there would be good.
We can do that. I would say we could do a recommendation, but because all the other sports, the leagues do it, I think we
Okay.
just come up with that recommendation
Great.
rather than a requirement.
Yeah. Any other additions? You're welcome.
Let's jump down to CFOA. Oh, there he is, right on time.
Security, you have the
Good.
floor.
Oh, wow. All right. Walk in and, well, good morning. Happy Wednesday. Just wanted to peek in real quick and thank you for the work you do on this committee. As you know, we just got done going through the whole process of classification and reclassification for the next cycle. It's ironic to me, and you'll probably be able to support this, but no matter where we place programs in other sports and activities, football is always the one that kind of draws the most attention and draws the most, hey, where are we going to be there? And how's that going to work? So I wanted to just thank you for the work that you did. That's not a process that starts, a couple weeks before we send all those leagues out. I know a lot of you've been working on that. I know for sure that Sully has. So I just wanted to thank you for that. Even if member schools at the end of the day say, gosh, I really don't like where we got placed, or I really don't necessarily like what this situation is, football or not. I think part of the important part of the process is being transparent so that you have access to information and you feel like you were part of that discussion. And so your representation for your different classifications, the work that you do, especially around such a high profile sport that everybody obviously has significant interest in. And certainly not to say that any of our activities aren't as important, but the ones that draw everyone's attention. So the work you do is really paramount. And I just like to remind you that committee work is actually the best example of the fact that we're a membership-driven organization. Our membership drives how we operate, and that really is evident because of the committee work that's done. So I recognize that your work will go forward and be approved by the Legislative Council as part of the process. But the direction, how the postseason is structured, all of those things really driven by your work and your expertise, your leadership. So I just wanted to make sure that I came in this morning and thanked you for that. Thank you for a successful season. We really felt like it was a really good fall relative to football. I want to thank Sully and Sandra for the work that they do. I think you, especially as committee members that they oversee, understand that they're two of the best communicators that we know, that set a really good standard for making sure that you're in the loop, that you have all the information that you need to be successful in your role. So I want to thank Sully and Sandra for the great work you do there. So I know you have a really full agenda today. I also, since one of my bosses is here, I want to thank our board of directors too for all the work that they do. Reed being here. And no matter what Mike Hughes says today, you need to double check everything with me before you take it and put anything in the minutes. So, yep. All right, Sully,
We
thanks.
actually gave him a broken mic, so.
Oh, that's a great idea. Okay, that's a great idea. Anytime, anything that you need, email, phone call. I know most of all of you should have my cell phone number, my email. We're here to serve you, and we really take that seriously, and we hang our hat on it. So thanks again for the work you do, and for our officials. Thank you for all the work that you do. We know you're our partners in this, and hope you feel that support from our office too. We're very grateful for all the work that you do. So, all right, thanks, Sol.
Hi, everyone. My name's John Conklin. I'm the current president of the Colorado Football Officials Association. Our perspective, it was a good fall season. There were the usual issues here and there, but George and I worked closely with John to address issues as they came up and move things along. And we thought we had relatively smooth championships. We saw a few opportunities for some things that we wanted to raise with you. One is we have, as you may recall, we've done 7 official crews on all of the 5A games and all of the 4A games beginning last year. And beginning this year, we did 3A, starting with the quarterfinals. And as it stands right now in 11-man football, that's when we use 7 official crews in the playoffs. And that's been very well received by the schools and the coaches. I think there was a fear initially that more officials would lead to more flags, but what we found is we can administer the game better and have more control and more preventative officiating and closer coverage on some of the downfield stuff that is harder to monitor in a 5 official crew. But in the 1A and 2A, we only use 7 officials in the championship games. And what we would like to propose is to expand that to the semifinals at those classification levels, simply to have more consistency and to make sure that those semifinal games are getting the same amount of attention as the semifinals in the other 11-man classifications. So that's one thing that we wanted to raise with you folks on that. And happy to take any questions, obviously, on any of these. The other issue that we have run into occasionally, particularly deeper in the playoffs, is clock operation. Sometimes the game is going very smoothly on the field with the on-field officials, but there can be issues with the clock operation. And we have for some time in those stadiums that have visible play clocks, we've been assigning a volunteer official as the play clock operator to make sure that it's run smoothly. But we have run into issues with game clocks at times. And so what we would like to propose is I'll say, option or opportunity for an official to be a game clock operator in some of the semifinal games, if that is indicated. And I think the balance there is, if a game's being played at a dedicated district stadium that has a game clock operator who's very experienced, we generally don't run into issues. But sometimes in those areas where the game clock operator is a little more either less experienced or they do some kind of rotation or something like that, we think it might be helpful to have official to be the game clock operator to make sure that the game clock runs smoothly as well. Have not seen anything that I would characterize as deliberate clock manipulation by anybody or anything like that. But the perception of fans, coaches, players is certainly, if there's problems with the clock, that it's on the officiating crew. And so it can detract from an otherwise well-played game, well-officiated game if there are clock issues. What's the third thing, George?
The third thing that we just wanted to mention for information is we've seen multiple examples of schools paying excessive money for travel. We have 16 associations in the state, and we have several associations that have officials that live outside their normal service area. And instead of getting the $1 metro fee, these officials have been entered into arbiter with mileage from their home address and getting excessive travel pay. So John and I are going to undertake a study to try to figure out where the problems are. And we're probably going to go forward to the compensation committee with a proposal to make some revisions to how travel is paid so that the schools will know exactly what their travel cost will be regardless of where the assigner has to find officials. We're a long ways off on that, but that's something that we're working on and hope we'll have it in place, or at least a proposal on the table in time for the 2026 season. Yeah.
Like you would normalize, if it's this many miles, it's $25. If it's over this many miles, it's 50. Because right now it's like that, you don't know if you're gonna pay 110 or 40 or $10.
Well, there's a couple of things that we're looking at, and we do know that there isn't one plan that fits everybody. Some of what we've encountered is not following the established CHSAA policy. For example, it was 8 officials. There are 8 officials that have been working in the Denver metro area that live outside the normal area where Denver officials live. And I think like one of them has made like $2,000. He lives in Greeley and he comes to Denver to do sub-varsity games, and his school is getting billed for mileage from Greeley for a sub-varsity game. That shouldn't be happening under the current rules, but yet it's going forward and it's getting to arbiter, and it gets paid most of the time. I have gotten, I did get one call from an athletic director who objected to that. And I told him to ignore what is in arbiter and just pay the $10 metro travel fee. And he followed through and did that, and I have not heard any pushback on that. So it's not only changing the policy to make it more equitable for both ends, but it's also getting a mechanism in place to monitor what's going on in arbiter. What we're kind of looking at is if you don't fit into a metro area, you would have a standard fee that would be based on the average of the officials that you should be getting, so that you can understand the cost up front. And then while I'm talking, I'd like to hear any feedback that you guys have on the playoffs or during the regular season, anything that you'd like to see us look at or work on for improvement or anything like that.
So if there's any feedback, let's do the feedback for George and John before we take a look at the 2 proposals they can.
Observation that I hear from a lot of coaches, specifically at the 5A level throughout the metro area, is always being curious as to why in those first couple rounds of the playoffs, we're seeing officials coming from other areas from around Colorado rather than the officials that have been working our games throughout the season in the metro area. Concerns that I've heard in the past was the speed of the game. You know, an official going from a 3A game to a 5A game. Not only have I heard this, but witnessed it too. Those connections that are developed over time. You know, I mean, coaches that have been working with officiating crews for years, they have a way of working things out on the field rather than a quick flag or with kids and throughout the course of a game. So those are some things that I've heard throughout the years at the 5A level.
So there's 2 things there. When we assign officials to playoff games, we have 2 considerations that are at the top of our priority list. The first one is neutrality. So if a Denver school is playing another Denver school in the first round, they will get Denver officials. If they're playing a Fort Collins or a Colorado Springs school, as an example, then they will get officials that are neither from Denver nor the wherever the other school is from. So if it was Denver versus Colorado Springs, you would not get Denver officials, you would not get Colorado Springs officials. The other thing that is actually second on our list is travel. Travel is a 2-sided coin. Number one, we want to limit the cost to the school for the travel expense. And secondly, we want to limit the time that the officials spent traveling to the game. So there's a mutual interest there. Other than that, the only other thing that influences where the officials come from is as a retention initiative statewide, we distribute playoff slots based on the percentage of members that an association has. So, for example, Grand Junction Association is allocated X number of slots based on their percentage of the membership. And if there aren't enough games on the western slope, we would assign Grand Junction officials to the Denver metro area to give them their fair share of playoff slots. John?
Yeah, so the only things I would add are, we do follow two guidelines when doing assignments. One is that officials from an area don't work more than one classification above what they see during the regular season. So we shouldn't have officials who only see 2A at the highest level during the regular season working 5A games. Now, the number of games that an area sees is influenced by the number of schools there, obviously. So we could have an area that has, you know, 1 or 2 5A schools, but those officials see those games, so we consider them qualified to work 5A games in Denver. The other thing is that because of what George said about neutrality, we end up having to send a lot of Denver officials out to other places to get that neutrality, north, south, you know, because Denver's centrally located and has the largest number of officials. And so there is that sort of crossover that occurs, and we do that for neutrality first, but try to minimize the travel involved in it if we can.
Okay, and then the only thing I would add to that is that I've been involved in the assigning of football playoff officials since 2004. And the policies that I follow, because I view myself as an extension of the CHSAA football commissioner. The policies have been shaped by 5 or 6 assistant commissioners, and none of them are locked in concrete. And if John wants to change anything, we certainly would follow through on that. And if anything questionable comes up, it's all discussed with John before it's enacted. And then the only other thing that hasn't gotten mentioned is in order to allow the flexibility that John mentioned about getting officials their fair number of slots, we use a $250 cap on travel for all games. And if the computed mileage to the CHSAA policy exceeds $250, then I get with the referee for the game and ask him, how do you want the $250 distributed? And there has been some angst on that because it takes us 2 or 3 days to do the assignments, and then I don't get to the travel, to the pay vouchers until after that. So some schools see some outrageous travel figures in Arbiter, which will get cleaned up, but if they get to it where I do, then we get some questions, and we've been able to resolve all that.
Can I ask John, George, one, thank you for your work. I know it's a labor of love, and it's a huge undertaking to assign all these games and the way it's done. Have you seen the quality of officiating with those 7-member crews? 2 questions, I guess. One, how are they graded? Are they graded out the film like on those saying, yeah, that definitely made an improvement in the game? itself and the administration of that game? And two, how do you forward officials to the next round of play? So if you see crews that are working, and I know you just talked about slots for certain areas, but how do you forward crews into the pecking order of, hey, that crew really worked well. That crews seemed to have done a really nice job this year. Let's elevate them to this semifinal game, or how do you guys go through that process?
Go ahead.
Okay. Great question. Multiple sources. One is, we get feedback from the area directors about, sort of their ranking, for lack of a better term, but, their thoughts on the officials in their area. And we use that preliminarily, but then, because playoff games are different, we look at the film after the playoffs, and particularly that sort of stratum in the middle from maybe the second round and the quarterfinals, to look at officials to advance in the future to see if they're ready for semifinal championship games. There is kind of a natural progression that can occur, but doesn't always occur. So it's not automatic that if you were first round game this year, the next year we would get a second round game, then quarterfinal, semifinal championship. All there's kind of a as the number of games goes down, there's more competition there. So we try to get better officials, identify better. If issues come up in a game, involving but we dedicate one of the statewide Zoom meetings to positioning and mechanics during the game. Not alone there either, because of the nationwide shortage of officials. I know Florida does the same thing. They work regular season 5 official crews and then playoff 7 official crews. I know there's a couple of other states that do as well. In terms of the game administration, it's when you work on a 7 official crew, you know that you can tell the difference. That your area of responsibility is less for almost everybody, which allows you to be more focused on that area of responsibility. And there's not as much scrambling, if you will, in a 5 official crew, to get somebody under the upright, a second official under the upright on a field goal, long field goal where the team runs on the field late, can be challenging sometimes. And you just don't have those kinds of issues with 7 officials. We've also found there's better sideline management because there's more opportunity for the officials to interact with the coaches. And just because an official, if the headlinesman is busy working with the chains or out on the field, there's another official on that sideline who can talk to the coach or help get players back, whatever the issue is. And so those things stand out when we do that.
Okay, so it's a very inexact science, and we are not perfect, and we are constantly looking for ways to do better. But we do work backwards. We select the championship and the semi-final officials first based on a long-term track record of excellence. And then we move forward with the start of the playoffs. And as John said, if we detect a problem, for an example, if an official has an inadvertent whistle, we will remove them from the remainder of their playoff games for that season, if they have any. And we also are very, very keenly attuned to incidents of I don't know what the right word is, but the closest word is unsportsmanlike conduct by the official. If they blow off a coach or show anger or something like that, we will also remove those. And that's the number one type of official that we try to keep out in the first place. So I know that was a long answer to your question, but that's where we're at. Okay.
Um, when considering the mileage deal, I hope we're out in the very northeast corner of the state and play six man. So, over the years, I've been doing this long enough. We'll have front range crews come out and they're like, we enjoy coming out, once a year and doing a six man or an 8-man game and things like that. So I hope that the mileage, as you're trying to figure that out, doesn't prevent crews from doing that. 'Cause I actually enjoy, usually when those guys come out, and officiate our games. So that was one point I wanted to make. Try and, now it's not my money that we're paying those officials the mileage, so it's easier for me to say I want them out there. But, and the second was just, I don't know, I heard the rumor last year or something that you guys even had trouble filling the state championship 6-man game. A lot of crews don't want to do that and stuff, but I know the last 2 years, especially the coaches haven't been real happy with the state championship, crew that got assigned to that. And I don't know what you can do if people aren't willing to work that level of a game, but we put in probably as much or close to as much time as anybody else. And like, sometimes just like for it to always be seen that way. So,
Well, we don't really have a problem with people refusing to do the 6-man championship game. Our challenge is finding quality officials that have worked 6-man football during the season. Because we don't want to send you somebody that is not familiar with the 6-man game. So yeah, it is particularly difficult for us to assign that game. But with specific feedback, we can avoid the dislikes of the past.
yeah. Well, and I guess I wanted to tie that in with the mileage deal, trying to hopefully have some of the crews that are on the front range or something able to go, or, feel like it's worth for them to go out and do a game and still getting, I don't want them to not do it because we're not gonna, we aren't getting any mileage basically for going out there. So then that'll cut down who we can get even that much more.
Well, and that's a great point, because with the mileage stuff, there's a number of stakeholders, and we do have to balance it so that officials are not de-incentivized from going and working a game because the mileage is so low that it doesn't make it, worth their time, kind of thing. The only 6-man football game I ever worked in my career was the 2012 state championship game. And I didn't tell the crew in advance that I'd never worked a 6-man game before, and we didn't have any issues. But when we got in the locker room afterwards, I told them that, and Tom Robinson heard me tell them that. And beginning the next year, there was a rule that you have to work the actual classification in order to be an official in the state championship, which was probably a good thing. But like George said, Denver doesn't do 6-man football, just the way the state is divvied up right now. So we don't send Denver officials to do 6-man football games in the playoffs either, for that reason. But yeah, we'll make sure we don't have that problem, and that the distribution from across the state stays the same.
For the championships, that's not an issue, because when CHSAA pays the officials for the championships directly, and they pay each official individual mileage. So there's no issue on the championship. If you feel you're, being shortchanged on the earlier games, please give me a call or send me an email and we'll see if we can detect a pattern or something, okay? All right?
Two proposals, that we would need a motion and a second and a vote for to give an official, recommendation. The first one would be, with the 7-man cruise. I'll make sure I heard you right. 7-man cruise for all 11-man classifications in the semis and up, correct?
Expanding 1A and 2A semifinals to 7 officials. So 8 additional officials in the playoffs.
Of a 7 official cruise, to the 1A and 2A semifinals. Moved by Zach. Have a second?
Second.
We do a roll call vote? Or, oh, yeah, do we have any discussion before?
That cost is to the school that is hosting. The cost is.
I have some discussion. I just looked up my GPNF. We hosted the first round. It was $697 I paid for officials. And then the quarterfinals, we had 7. It jumped up to 915. I don't feel like the officiating was better with 7 versus 5 in our game. In that game, we had 7 officials. We had helmets ripped off. I remember it was 6 or 8 times. And there was not a single call made on any of them. Literally, I watched one kid grab the helmet, jerk it off, throw it on the ground right in front of official. There was no call. I know this is a single game situation, but with 7 people on the field, somebody should be able to see something like that happening, and it didn't happen. So I don't know that the seven men cruise is that much more effective than a 5-man crew, personally.
Lot of officials who've been exposed to 7 official crews. We have a fair number of officials who've worked those deep wing positions, back side judge and field judge. And I know in the Denver area, I can't speak for all areas, but in the Denver area, we do an on-field meeting early in the season. And that will have some component of working 7 officials as well. So we do as much as we can.
I only have one game experience, from it. It was very positive from a coaching aspect. We got a lot of communication, but again, that's a 1 game, data point. I don't have, a lot of them.
Or is this just for the state championship?
That was for, yeah, the state championships games. No, this would be for the semis and the state championship. Any other discussion? We want to do a roll call vote? Or do we want to do a
We can
thumbs
just do a
up?
regular and then, if it's close, we can do a roll call.
Okay, so we'll just do a thumbs up and thumbs down. So all in favor of the proposal, please signify by a thumbs up. Looks like that is passes.
You want to do opposed, just so we get the number.
And opposed with the thumbs down. And 2 opposed. So it passes with a 10-2 vote. So the next one is the clock operation. So in the semis, an official, running the game clock, correct?
Yeah, and we see it as a availability that say issue. We have triggers an official and one team plot and work with game administration to determine if that's appropriate. And work with John to determine if that's appropriate.
Yeah, it would be an option and, we would discuss it with the host athletic director, beforehand. And we would use our database of game reports, because, we have a record of where we've had problems with the clock during the regular season. So it wouldn't be automatic that we'd, ask to have an official there. It would be something that would be negotiated with the, host athletic director.
What would the cost, be? Would it be like paying another official?
No, it would not be a full official fee. The rate that the schools have been paying during the regular season where they use, play clock operators is, $55 a game. And that, we would establish that as the fee for a clock operator.
So,
Is this just like top operators or is it both school?
No,
Clock
it would be,
operators.
the play clock operators, are fine. Everything is, working agreement with just about everybody in the state on that. Talking about the game clock now.
George, the question I would have is, I don't know if this is a proposal because it's not mandated, right? So this is not something that would be mandated. It would be requested from the CFOA and it would be site specific. Is that correct?
I would say I think it's a great option for the other schools to have and to work with the officials on that. Those semifinals tend to fall that weekend of Thanksgiving break. From an athletic director end, getting those game workers and game help, it's hard. And oftentimes those individuals have families out of town and everything else. So your game clock worker that you've had there for years could be going out of town that weekend if you make that round. So to have that option to help ensure the game.
So rather than a proposal, is this something that we could just communicate out to schools that we have officials available to do this? Number one, and then if there are specific sites where we've had issues throughout the year that we have notes on through game reports, that we can make a request via the athletic director or district athletic director for that.
Yeah, we'll defer to you on the process.
Okay, cause I definitely do not want to mandate it. I don't see a full need for that if it's going to be some site specific areas. So I think that's something that we can communicate out from our office prior to semifinals. I mean, heck, we could possibly make it available all playoffs if a school wanted that, correct? Because some schools do that already. Harder when it gets to semifinals or prior to the week of semifinals, communicating that out to athletic directors and district athletic directors. Okay. Okay. So no proposal there. It's just something Sandra and I will take care of.
Okay. So that will include the officials report.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you, guys. We'll skip that
No.
one. Is that correct?
Correct.
There's no smack update as well.
Correct.
I'll hand over to solely for bulletin item.
Okay, couple bulletin items that I'd like to get through and just get some feedback from the folks in here. If you're an athletic director, you've probably already seen the video appeal for ejections due to a physical act. I wanted to see if there was any feedback on that. Essentially, and I thank John and George for helping me with this. Essentially, what we would be able to do, which doesn't currently exist within our bylaws, is to create an appeal process for somebody that was ejected specific to a physical act. This is also not football specific. It could be any sport. We see it a little bit more in football than other ones, but a situation where, full transparency, I work closely with John and George in situations already where we get film from ADs and coaches, and if a fight occurred, we're trying to identify if somebody was actually involved with the fight, if the number was right. That's not supported by the bylaws right now, to be honest with you. In my opinion, it's the right thing to do. If a kid wasn't involved, they shouldn't be ejected. This gives us a way to look through that process. It would be a situation where the school would need to send the video to our office, and then I send it to the CFOA. CFOA would essentially look at it and say, this is a situation where the officials got it right, or we didn't get it right. So there's also some objectionable offenses in the game that could occur outside of a fight that we want to get right as well. Understand with a situation in looking at video appeals, this could be a slippery slope to other things. We are very specific to ejections and physical acts. It's not going to be a situation where my kid said this, got ejected. Oh, he didn't say that. That's not something we're going to look at. So it's very specific to a physical act. Just wanted to see if there was any feedback from the football committee that I could also relate to our board of directors once we go through that process. Or actually, I don't know if we'll have a board of directors meeting before. Yeah, we have one in January prior to legislative council in February. But wanted to see if there were any feedback or thoughts on that. It's not something we're going to vote on. Just wanted to get some feedback. Yeah.
I guess my question, I've had time to think about it too. Would it be more punitive? So if you see, okay, it's not number 12, it's actually number 11. Is number 11 now rejected?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then is it subjective? Oh, that wasn't a punch, that was an open hand push. Is there going to be some, or is it just looking at it was not number 12?
Right. No. It would allow us to look at the situation, which is really hard right now. Those of us that have worked in schools know that it was situations where a kid pushes another kid in the hall, and one person may view it as one thing and another person views that as another. In that situation, right in that moment, you don't have the ability to look at a video and get it right. This is a situation I think that we would. So if it's a push versus a punch, it may be subjective, yeah. And I think, and I don't want to speak for George and John, but it's got to be overwhelming evidence either. So if it's a situation where we're not sure, that call would stand.
I mean, my concern, I know we talked about this and what the timeline is. Obviously, some of the jackets we do this film, it's not the same day. Like if everybody has a baseball, they're not going to be eligible for the second game. There's not enough time to make that happen. I guess my concern with the timeline is number 12 ejected, family from number 12 send that in. It's Tuesday or the AD sends it in. Okay. Well, all of a sudden we find out it's actually number 10, we didn't even know, but number 10's ejected. It's Wednesday. That was your starting running back. I don't know. There's some.
Sure, and that's possible. I'm not going to say it's not, but again, it's I think putting us in a better situation to get things right if we have the technology to do so. Go ahead, Paul.
Let's say
let's say it's a situation that actually doesn't get caught, right? Like our coaches in, like if there's something egregious that happens, are they then able to send it in and say, can you take a look at this? So this is just,
Somebody
that got
needs to
caught.
be ejected for us to even look at that situation. So we would not be in a situation where, hey, this punch occurred. I saw it on film. Officials didn't call it. We need to eject this kid. That's not something we're gonna do. It's gotta start with that preface of somebody got ejected. And making sure that call is correct.
Thank you.
John, I feel like if there is a situation inside of a game where a kid is ejected, there, we should be just about 100% sure that that ejection was worthy at that time. Not only that, but if we move forward with this, I think it's also important along the lines you were talking about, that the upcoming opponent is notified of any overturns of the objection. You know, coaches are in tune, they're scouting and watching film. Show up on a Friday, number 67's in pads. Why is he in pads? You know what I mean? So I think that's part of the conversation too.
Sure, that could be communicated. I don't know what that process looks like, Wes. I would almost, yeah, I totally, I mean, you're scout for a certain kid and another kid shows up. I get that. You know, who does that fall on? Does that fall on our office? Does it fall on the athletic director or coach reaching out? Hey, is this kid? You know, I would have no problem saying yes or no to that, but on an average weekend, maybe we have 12 to 13 ejections. I don't know if I have the time to reach out to all the schools and be like, hey, this call is still being upheld or it's not. So I would prefer if it came from the school and have no problem answering those questions, but I totally get what you're saying though.
Is there any regulation on the film where it comes from? So let's say the game film, film shuts off.
Yep.
But mom's iPhone footage runs and gets it.
Correct.
Footage would be away.
Anything, but it's gotta come from the school though. It's gotta come from the school. So if they're getting 4 or 5 sources, that's, again, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Oh, I just wonder if, like, what the precedence it sets for other sports, for that timeline. Greenwood football, you have all week to kind of
Yeah.
get it together. With other sports, you may have one day. I mean, you may have 2 days. And so the suspension will be honored anyway until it's overturned.
Correct.
But by then, it may only be 1 game suspension as
Sure.
it is.
I'm 100% agree with your point. I think one thing it could help in if there is a second ejection with a kid, that number goes up. Whereas if, yeah, maybe it didn't get overturned in time, which let's just say this bylaw didn't pass, that kid's gonna sit anyway, right? But if it got overturned, but he or she missed the game, you might be in a situation where if later on in the season something happened, you know, I think about soccer because.
Yeah. Right.
So it might be a situation where no longer is it a kid's second ejection, it falls back to his or her first ejection. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that timeline is something I think we could look at within our office. And I don't know if that timeline is something that could be sports specific, but I think it's a starting point for now.
Yeah. That's the thing I was thinking about the other sports. I think
Yeah.
football, you have a
Yeah.
little bit more gift of time, but with soccer or
Basketball.
soccer is exactly what I was thinking about
Yeah.
is by the time you get your response regarding the appeal, you may have already sat your kid anyway for it. So, but that's the only thing is does the commissioner have the capacity to respond in a timeliness of the sport? That's all.
Sure. I can't answer for other commissioners. I know John, George, and I work very closely on Sundays and Mondays to go through any issues, and we usually figure things out within 24 hours or so. Because you know, if you get one of your kids booted and you want them back in the game, you're going to be calling. So, yeah, Greg.
This discussion brings back to mind for me, I had a JV football game 3 years ago. And we had kids ejected from the game and they're on the sideline and they're an altercation on the field. They stepped towards the activity. They were ejected because they came onto the field, even those 2 feet. But if we had film footage of that, that would maybe prevent something like that from happening. And then that same year, we had another situation where a young man was ejected and he wasn't part of it. He was pulling his teammate off.
Right.
Ejected both of them
Sure.
because they were in
Yeah,
action.
it's heat of
So
the moment, yeah.
I guess my point with bringing those two situations up, I do think there are times where it would be helpful and more fair consequences would be handed out, but I also hear Zach's point where does the film come from? But I guess it doesn't really matter where it comes from if it shows something that we can get the call right for kids, because it's hard sometimes I think of fights in the hallways. You get out there and you're trying to figure out who's doing what and you're pulling them out and your memory is something different than something else. And so if you have that video footage, I think it would be helpful from that perspective. So.
Other discussion? Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. 2 other items before we get to something we'll need to vote on. Was asked this past summer about clarifying what can and can't be done in a summer padded camp that's being hosted by a high school. So schools have 2 options, actually 3, not doing a camp, going to a collegiately hosted camp, or doing something on your own. The question was more along the lines of doing something on your own. After your pad progression is complete, what is allowable and what's not allowable? So there's nothing really definitive in our bulletin right now. Typically schools will end up with a scrimmage or a multi-team scrimmage. So the question was, could you do a joint practice similar to what a lot of NFL teams do? When I was asked that this past summer, I said, yes, you could. Once that pad progression is done, I've been to collegiate camps where you're basically hitting morning, afternoon, and night. So my thought was, why would we limit what happens in a different situation where coaches are there, they're controlling things and doing what's best. Just because it's a joint practice doesn't mean it's a scrimmage. You're just seeing different bodies there. But wanted to see if there was any discussion, any people have any problems with that. Because this would be something I would probably put a little Q&A into the bulletin, just for clarity.
College camps are super expensive and it's not, especially at smaller schools, really hard to find matchups. You go as a small school matchup and it's a 3A school and you're like, this isn't a good fit. There might be only 2 teams there that are a good fit for you. I just think spelling out what that means. If you're going to a college camp, you have to do this. It should be the exact same thing for the high school.
Availability, right?
Another question I had is from a liability perspective for CHSAA, for the school, the camp has probably some sort of camp insurance, just not telling people what to do, but the idea that you should follow these. This is what college camps do. So have a camp insurance and follow this progression.
I'm not mistaken, I believe if it is hosted at the high school then has their own insurance for that, but.
So I think that could be a great option.
Yeah.
For schools, especially smaller schools. They can't find a fit.
John, if I can clarify, this is a proposal for joint practices prior to the scrimmage date.
It's actually not even a proposal, Corey. It's just a clarification on what schools can and can't do in the summer. We don't really, the only thing we can really control in the summer is the number of days that they can be in pads, so that 10 days within a 2-week consecutive 2 weeks. Them following that shortened pad progression. And then from there, again, if they go to a university camp, it's kind of what the university sets up. So
Practice for 3 days and then scrimmage on Saturday with the same team. Practice and not scrimmage for.
correct.
That would have to take place before this third.
Yeah, this is that summer padded camp option. Correct. Correct. I get a lot of requests during the school year to do joint practices. That would be considered a scrimmage. But in the summer, Because we don't limit the number of scrimmages at at a collegiate camp. Why, I'm not sure why we would limit it for high schools at their own site if they host it. If there's nothing else, I will make that adjustment in the bulletin and communicate that out to coaches.
Can I ask a question? Just, I want to go back, John and George, just 1 second on, because it triggered my thought process. I know everything trickles down from what we see at the college level, and it seems to filter down into high school level, right? I saw more this year, in my opinion, again, more kids without mouthpieces and more kids with their pants not covering their knees. Sometimes that was addressed, and other times it was not. And I'm assuming that the question that happens before games is still the same one that's been asked for, are your kids properly and legally equipped? What is your determination on properly and legally equipped when it comes to those two things? I mean, we talk about head safety all the time, and we talk about jaw as much as anything else. And there's just not, it seemed like mouthpieces have become kind of an optional thing, not a mandatory requirement anymore. Is that still, can I just get a rules clarification on that? And not to just get into the weeds too much on this, but what's the point of emphasis from you guys to your body of officials when it comes to those type of interactions and meetings?
Two totally different subjects. I'm not aware of any issue with the mouthpieces. The rule on the mouthpiece has not changed at all, except for they don't want the kid to have an extra mouthpiece hanging from his face mask, which is kind of a non-issue. But players have to have a mouthpiece, and that rule is to be strictly enforced. I haven't seen anything in the game reports about mouthpieces. I mean, they're not easy to, a missing mouthpiece is not easy to spot. And we certainly don't want officials spending their time in between plays checking players' mouths. So I mean, we'll point that out for next season. But I really don't know of any issue with that.
So the question is the same, are all your players legally equipped? But there's a difference between wearing illegal equipment like old shoes with metal spikes on them versus not wearing equipment.
The Federation did away with the foul for failure to wear required equipment. Like if a kid had a mouthpiece hanging down before a play, they wear it during the play. Most mouthpieces now, a lot of them don't have the attachment face mask anymore. It's, paper in and out. And so I know way to know if the kid has a mouthpiece, if that's the case. And then if I observe a player without a mouthpiece during the play or
After a play, they had it in or it's now out. The presumption is that it came out as part of the play or contact or something like that. If I see a wide receiver standing right in front of me and I'm working the wing, I'm going to tell them, hey, put your mouthpiece in, because they see at the higher levels, the receivers don't put their mouthpiece in if they're not going to run downfield and catch, if they're not really involved in the play that much. So sometimes the kids try to do that. But like George, I'm not aware of a serious issue or a big problem with it. And then for the knees, there's two issues there. One is knee pads are required currently under the rules in high school. And for the pants, it has to be to cover the knees. That's what the rule says. And because they see it at higher levels, the kids want to not do that stuff. So if a player has their pants rolled up deliberately, we'll tell them to unroll their pants. We try to get all that stuff pregame, so we're not interrupting the game by sending kids out or not letting the kid come in. But really what we're doing is notifying the coach about the problem and the kids. And you're right, some officials do more to enforce it, I'll say, than
other officials do. But in general, what we tell the officials is, work with the coach, let them know what the problem is.
Mouthpiece thing, the trend is actually to have the hanging mouthpiece, not to have the non-hanging mouthpiece. So I think to your effect, it's like a lot of kids are wearing the hanging mouthpiece, are never wearing it. It's just dangling. I think that's what we've seen. And then with the pants, it seems very similar to me to high school basketball. You got to tuck your jersey in before you come in the game, or else you can't play. If that's not the enforcement, then probably should have the rule. You can wear whatever pants you want. We get kids that have a knee pad, and we don't allow it. Our coach would be like, pull your pants down, that are mid thigh. It's not even close. It's the, it's punter in the NFL type of scenario. It's college football where it's absurd. So to me, it's like, well, we tell them it's like, it's a rule enforcement prior pregame, and it's like tucking your shirt in the NFL. Otherwise, it's just going to keep, we're not going to have pads. So I know in the NFL, they got somebody on the sideline. Think in pregame, letting the coach know if your kids have pants above the knees, we're going to stop the game and we're going to send them out, not a flag. You're going to be sent out. Kids are going to actually comply because they want to be in the game.
I don't want to get into you guys have enough to do. I just wonder what the enforcement type of talk is for you guys prior. I think that part to get to coaches would be good to like say, hey, this is how we're going to address this, how we're going to address these couple of things so that we can get a more universal approach to kind of what's happening across the state. And they vary. I understand that. I mean, some crews more call holding, some crews more call certain things. I totally understand that part of it. I just think that we talk about player safety a lot, and player safety, in my opinion, needs to just extend. Like we spent, the Broncos have just spent millions of dollars on these helmets. I'd like to make sure that we're doing the part that we can do while enforcing the kids are wearing the proper equipment, mouthpieces and the like. And I know you can't see everyone. I get that. I just like to be maybe addressed early and as often as can be, just, hey, talk to coaches, make sure that they know how we're going to try and view this.
Well, the rule may change in January because there'll be a proposal from the state of Georgia to the Rules Committee that will change the rules. So this may be different for next year. But the one thing I want to address is what John pointed out, and it's the distinction between improper and illegal. We can check the players before the game, and we do. And we check to see that they have a knee pad and that the pants go down to the knee. After the inspection, the kid turns around and runs back to his practice area and his pants right up. He is not now illegally equipped. He's improper. And by rule, you only send them out when they're illegally equipped. If they're become improperly equipped through play, all we have to do is tell them to pull their pants down. And that happens. But again, like with the mouthpieces, do we really want our officials spending the time between plays looking for who needs to pull their pants down? Or do we need to be looking at the stuff that was mentioned here about who's shoving who after the play? So it's kind of a no-win situation, but we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up so we can educate the officials about the mouthpiece stuff. The knee and pants stuff we've been dealing with now for several years. And we'll continue to do, what we can to get consistency and enforcement. But thanks for putting the mouthpiece stuff on our radar.
Next item I'd like to add to the bulletin, you can see on your agenda, would just be the seating steps that we use for playoffs. All these steps are written out in the bulletin right now. It's a little hard to follow, to be honest with you. I think just having steps numbered would indicate to coaches and athletic directors, hey, this is the first thing we look at, this is the second thing, and so on. So I would just want to see if there's any feedback on that. So I wasn't going to change the language in the bulletin. I was just going to add these seating steps to that process. Any concerns with that?
On number one there, John, what if it's a 24 team bracket? Is that like a?
Yeah, I'll change that to top 16/24. Thank you. Okay, the next item would be something that we will need to vote on as a committee. This is something that we had discussed earlier regarding the new playoff auto qualifiers for mixed class leagues. First year we're having mixed class leagues, so just wanted to see if there was want to get list this out, and then if there's any more discussion with this. So essentially, playoff qualifying for mixed leagues. Auto qualifiers in mixed leagues would be awarded to one, first situation, a higher classification team. So if we have a 4A, 5A league, we're talking about the 5A school, only when at least 2/3 of the teams are of the higher classification, and then one of these teams wins the league. So if you're playing, if you're a 5A school playing in a 4A league, you need to have 2/3 of the schools in that league be 5A schools to have an auto qualifier. Doesn't mean you can't make the playoffs. It just means you would not be an auto qualifier if you won the league. Second part of that is if you are the lower class lower class team in that league, all you would need to do is win the league to have the auto qualifier. So same situation, if I'm a 4A school in a 5A, 4A league, and I win the league, I am the auto qualifier. Yeah, Greg.
For clarification, if it's a 4A, 5A classification, you have two 5A schools and a 4A. They win the league. Does the 4A then?
No,
Then that league would not have an auto.
they would not have an auto qualifier. Obviously, still be able to qualify through max preps, but just would not have an auto qualifier. So if this is the direction that we would want to go, we would need a motion for this in a second.
Almost.
I'll second.
I would add, this is something that would be for next year. And if there's situations where we find that this is not working, we should fix it. And it's not something that would be cycle specific. It's something that could be fixed seasonally if we find an issue with this.
Well, in that example, if you had two 5A teams in that 4A classification, a 5A team wins it, they become the automatic qualifier doing 5A, or they need
No.
more teams in that classification to make it 2/3.
Correct, they would need more. They would, again, still be able to qualify for playoffs, but they need to do it through max preps. They would not be the auto qualifier for the league.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please vote with a thumbs up. It's like a unanimous vote, correct? Motion passes with unanimous vote.
That's it for me.
Do we want to take a 5-minute break? Do you guys want to keep going? What else do you guys? Keep rolling? All right, so qualifying and seating process. So kind of just go through each class, and if you guys want to give your feedback on the qualifying seating process, how it's worked, if there's anything we need to look at, we want to start with 6-man.
Good. Lon?
One thing that was brought up, to my attention, was, being that we have moved to 4 conferences and 6-man, would be the top 2 seeds from each, conference, would make playoffs and possibly both host. Then that would give you your top 8. Not your top 8 seeds, but your 8 hosts, and then everybody falling in after that with the max preps would be your traveling teams and your qualifiers.
We would need a proposal for that. Lon, is that coming from a specific league, or I didn't hear anything about that when I was out at the 6-man meeting.
No, that was just some chatter from coaches and ADs as an idea. So that would need to be a proposal.
For next year, discuss it at the 6-man meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
8-man?
Thanks.
1A? Yeah, keep it 16. I think we're happy in 1A. 2A?
Good.
I just concerns about the qualifiers increasing to 24. But I think that's kind of a moot point because it's already been passed through legislative council.
Yeah, so the concerns would be more about quality of.
Yeah, quality of the playoff. I mean, right now there's 35, I think, 2A schools, and 24 of them are going to make the playoffs. And, you know, you're going to have a lot of 3 and 6, 2 and 7. Well, not a lot, but there'll be some. And I don't know if that's a good thing.
I think one concern I have with the 2A is moving it up a week as well. So now we just got 3A aligned with everybody else, and then we lose 2A. So again, we're going to be in a situation where the playoffs are ending at different times for different classifications. I don't know if it's a problem. It's just where we are.
When we were doing the leagues, some of those cross-divisional leagues, 1A, 2A, that did make it, very briefly attest to it, that did make it difficult because we end the seasons at different times.
Yeah.
And 2A and 1A are a natural fit. And that really puts 1A just kind of on an island.
Yeah.
Between 8-man and 2A, so.
Yeah.
That would be my concern.
I just feel we're lowering the bar, to qualify for the playoffs instead of keeping the bar consistent and teams reaching that.
That challenge is not just lowering the bar. We were the 16 seed in 1A and one shot on the clock. So the idea that they're not good in quarterfinals really anyway. So it's good to make playoffs just for kids, and matchups are important.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we can keep the data on this next cycle and see if that's something we want to continue to move forward with for sure.
3A. Uh, 4A. Good. And 5A.
This will get interesting. Those 4 leagues are just so are competitively at a higher level, right? Than we say if you're in a 4A, 5A mixed. That's a difference in the qualifying criteria. I know you got to make it by your max preps, right? What do we do for those 27 schools now that are in that classification that are 5A only? and their criteria for making the playoffs out of those leagues. We did talk a lot about it. I don't know if there's an easy answer to say that just two make it out of each league automatically. And then the rest is based on max prep rank. Wes, I'll defer to you. What have you heard?
I think we're gonna want I think a lot of people were happy. I think that it's gonna look new and different to a lot of us. The actual process, I think we're gonna learn a lot here. I'm excited for it. I think there's going to be some new abilities to play teams that schools haven't played in a while, especially with the crossover. I think the scheduling piece was greatly helpful. I will say that my concern is hopefully that pool of competitive teams in 5A begins to grow. Kind of feel like we've gone backwards with this, and we have a smaller pool of 5A schools in that conversation. And I hope it becomes a bigger pool in the future.
Just a reminder, that the CHSAA Max Preps is gonna replace the current, seating and selection index. I don't know if it's the same with you, but, everybody in Ray gets on Max Preps and they look at the national Max Preps. And, then you have to explain to a bunch of parents that that's not it. Go to the CHSAA site, go to the CHSAA one. So just as a reminder, or maybe we could really accentuate that in the bulletin, that it's the CHSAA Max Preps and not the national Max Preps. So, yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's a continued problem all year. It's what I found this year. It was not coaches and ADs. I just get a lot of email from parents and fans of certain programs. So it's an educational piece, and football is the only sport that has to deal with that. So.
Right, next agenda topic is the league building discussions. Just wanted to get some feedback from that, and I'll pass that off to.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate again how appreciative I was for all of you. It's a big ask for you all to take time out of your regular days and come in here and do all the league building stuff. You know, and of course the feedback that comes with that. So thank you for that. With this being new, I think one of the tricky things this year that was different from the past is we added another variable to the process with the multi-class things. With the multi-class leagues, you have the ability to create different leagues. So there are more options out there. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but it makes our job harder to create those leagues. So, you know, when we first finished the process, I was like, this was awful. It was a lot of work. It was, you know, we obviously got a lot of feedback coming back. The more I've had time to kind of digest and think about it, I think we ended up in a pretty good position. So we have a situation where we make a recommendation to CLOC. Schools were able to put proposals forth to CLOC and discuss those moving forward. I think the next time we do this, it will be easier. We have a model in place right now. My hope is that we are fine tuning some things moving forth. I think one piece of feedback that I will give as well, and we just talked briefly about it, was 2A made it very difficult in terms of creating creating a situation where we could pair teams that would be better off playing each other in the 1A, 2A areas. When you have two classifications that end at different times, it's virtually impossible. We have some 2A schools that are playing in more of a 1A league, and that's great. But there are also stipulations where they have to have the league bye in that week 10 just to make the league schedule work. that makes it a little bit difficult. So I don't know if we're there yet with where we want to be, but I think we're off to a good start. But I wanted to get some feedback from you folks in terms of the process. Are there things that we can implement in the process? Or are we okay with this model? And then, some of you actually won't be on the committee next time we do this. So we want to build a structure that another person can step right in without missing a beat and understand kind of what's going on. So would love to hear some feedback for that. A little bit of feedback I have heard is we've done work. Okay. And then there's the possibility that another committee could change what we've done. Right. And that did happen. That clock committee did ask for feedback from football committee. So they are asking for that, but that is a possibility that they could completely change what we do. I don't think that would happen in the future. Because I do think what we say holds a lot of credence in their eyes. But in terms of the overall process, just wanted to get some feedback on, I don't know, ways we could improve moving forward. I don't love the timing of everything. People get nervous with it being the fall before the fall before the next fall that we're going to play. I think we could have moved things, maybe met a week later. 3A's changing, moving up. So that was a little bit of an issue. We had to create some leagues where some 3A schools could have been affected based on how they did in playoffs. That were the next week after we met. So anyway, I'll just open it up, see if anyone has anything that we can add to this.
I think I'll start. The one thing from 1A, and Reed, please, if there's something different on your aspect, but not everybody's happy with everything, right? But what the common theme that I got, at least for 1A, was they felt their voices were heard. They felt that when things were brought up, that they understood why things were being put there. I know that's a pain in the butt for John because he gets all of those things back. But I think the one positive thing from this last cycle is, at least in the 1A, they felt the membership felt that they were being heard when we were making those changes. So I want to that'd be mine.
I would say the biggest thing was bigger leagues. As much as you like the idea of making the perfect schedule, is impossible. So just not having to worry about one extra game, and that does create some geography issue. But by and large, people were very appreciative of 17 leagues.
Agree with that as well.
Trying to create that consistency. So.
What about the crossover? Any feedback on the crossover matchup?
I've found filling non-league games became more difficult, having less to fill because everybody had less to fill. So there was less options. When we had to fill more games, there was people that had needs. So that was a little bit of a challenge because the other thing I heard with that when I started calling around was there's people already of who they're going to play. So it makes it challenging for your non-league stuff. But it was nice having the crossovers. We'll see how it goes when you still don't know how the 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2 is going to work out. I'm curious to see how that falls into place after a year. I think the other discussion that I would propose with this, it felt like we were kind of in a silo doing our 3A stuff. It would be nice so we could do that work together and then as a whole group talk about it, because there might be things that we missed. And then I know for me, I go back and Junction Fruit is Central, and so I have to defend what we do here. And there was things that changed from when we left here and when I got home, and they're asking me questions I didn't know the answers to. So I think if we're all unified when we leave here on what our decisions are,
Culminating event.
it makes it easy for me to say, well, this is why Fruit is playing 5A and Junction's playing 4A, or whatever the situation is. That's one specific one. It just would be and then you guys might see something from your perspective that we didn't see or talk about. And I think as a whole, I think we might be able to discuss some of that stuff as a group.
For, at least for 4A in the like Pikes Peak region, those leagues, it was funny. It turned into what you don't know, you now know, getting a bigger league. So you're excited about not having to find as many games, but similar to what you just shared, you're all looking for the same weeks with everybody else. So the rodeo of trying to figure that out, some teams have it figured out, some still don't. And so the crossover is great, but then on the flip side, it takes away from your flexibility of your schedule too, right? And so I think now looking back, many people are like, well, the flexibility was the key, but it was also a detriment for some people at one point too. So I don't know if you make everybody happy, but bigger the league, the less flexibility you have. So.
Thank you. You want me to just keep going on to the next thing? Okay. As part of the clock meeting, the clock has asked the football committee to look at the potential of an open division for the 28-30 cycle. So I would today just like to introduce what that open division is, what it could be for, what it is for other states. And just see if there's any discussion. We may not have any discussion at all just because it's being introduced right now. This may be something that doesn't work in Colorado. But it is an option like I said, in some other states. So basically what an open division is at the end of the regular season, a certain amount of teams are placed in an open division for an open state championship that would not be classification specific. Don't know if that works in Colorado. There are some states that some of the top tier teams, best teams in the state, aren't always in that top classification either because doesn't matter why, but that occurs in some other states, maybe more than it would happen here. One thing that we have that we hear a lot in our office here is pretty much every classification that does 11-man has the ability to be bumped up. Okay, except 5A. So this would almost be a way to bump up a 5A, where you're creating I don't want to say a separate tier, but it almost is a separate tier. I don't know what it would look like for 4As, 3As if they qualified. No idea what that qualifier would be to play in an open division. But again, clock asked us to look at this and just wanted to get some thoughts if anyone had anything on here. I apologize I didn't add this to the agenda a couple weeks ago when I first sent it out to give you some time to marinate with it, but just wanted to see if there's any thoughts with it.
What problem is it trying to solve? Like who would this benefit the most? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, Reed, to be honest with you. I think it goes to what Wes had talked a little bit about earlier. There almost seems to be a growing chasm between the top end of 5A and everybody else. So I don't know if it solves the problem. I don't know if there's a problem.
Between an open versus other classifications, I think there's
Yeah.
every application 6-man be like, I think that number's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the main.
That number's a little high.
Here's the main difference between 6A, like adding a classification versus an open division. The open division obviously does not, could include anybody. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it just might include 5A schools. I don't know. But by creating a 6-man, our current system for classification is enrollment specific, right? I don't know if there's a true correlation between the enrollment of schools in 5A and their success. Obviously, you have Cherry Creek at the top with the largest enrollment. But when you go through the rest of them, I don't know if that's the case. You know, you have a lot of Denver schools that are in the mid 2000s that are in that top tier of enrollment. So are they 6A? Is that doing what you would want it to do? But again, what do we want it to do? I don't know.
I'm just curious in the 5A like playoff landscape, are there, you know, when you look at 1 and 16 running problems all the time. What does the matchup look like for Cincinnati?
Yeah. Well, remember in that first round, 1 through 8 aren't playing. There's a bye. So you get some decent games. A lot of it is matchups. You know, you'll have you could have some teams from a really strong league that may be 22, 23 that give 10 and 11 a really good game. I think well, I would have to go look at the scores and everything, but I didn't see I saw probably larger margin of victory in that second round, to be honest with you, than that first round.
I would just be curious because I'm not in 5A space. I would be curious what those top tier things are like. That's awesome. Or like a top level 4A team that gets pulled up, they're like, that's great. We get played more like competition, or they're like, do I have to?
Right. Right.
But what you're really trying to do is like a 5A school that actually has a chance versus those not having to play those top tier. That is a good team. That's not. I'd be curious. You're in that level, that arena, Mike.
It's a really interesting thought. I have a question, and like, why did Clark propose it? What was their rationale for wanting to kind of seek this? Are they just looking for some?
I think
What
just
is the state?
just to explore, just to look. That certainly was not a mandate or anything like that. It was just a look, a conversation piece.
And my second thing is, we are not Louisiana or Texas or Georgia. We do have some really, really strong private schools, but they're not coming from 2A competing with 5A schools. They just, I mean, this is meant as no offense. I don't think a Forge Christian at 1A is going to compete with Cherry Creek at 5A. Whereas you could see that in Louisiana. You could see that in some schools that have a much different private school base. And the difference in California is different than it is in Colorado. I mean, I think there's a difference there when you see the overall strength of some programs. I do see this growing gap, as Wes alluded to a little bit earlier. Like I think any 5A school would like to be in that tier. They would love to be in that strata because that's one, good for your school. It means that your school and your program. But I do believe the way that it is structured now with these multi-classifications leagues are what's best right now for programs, are what's best for our state as far as competitive games to get that. We'll see what happens with this. You know, like what are schools that qualify for the playoffs out of the 4A, 5A mixed league? How do they compete against schools that were strictly in that division? And I think that will give us a little more clarity on, is the gap just so huge between this and this?
Or do they qualify?
Or do they make it at all, right? Or is it just a bracket for these schools only, and these schools didn't qualify, period? Because that might change some people's mindset on where do they want to play. Like they're like, whoa, we had a really good year. We didn't make it at all. I didn't think that would happen. So again, there's a lot of unknowns. I do think that if you are, let's take a 4A Dakota Ridge who is really, really good and had a really good year, would they have wanted to just say, let's see what we've got? Let's see if we can compete with the Valor's Creeks, Regis, Grandview type squads? Or do we want to win a state title? I would assume, my assumption is I would want to win a state title in my classification and stay there and celebrate that with my community rather than be the 7 or 8 seed and not, get that playoff success. And essentially then be like, boy, I got punished for having a really good year by ended up having to be placed into this little 18 tier or whatever it would have been. So I just think it's a little different.
Have that in, right, we have that in place right now, Eric.
I would say I see a lot of those concerns, especially with the Dakota Ridge example that Mike threw out there. If you're a very strong 4A school, I would also say though that there's the argument to be made that in the past, we could look at a handful of 5A and 4A teams that may make a much better playoff bracket and better games moving forward. I don't know how those 4A schools would feel about it, but I think there's that argument that it could be a more competitive setting or a more competitive bracket. The question that I have, and I'm curious, have an open division. What is their criteria? Is it a human element? Is it a committee? What does that look like as far as deciding? Because I get it, if you're Dakota Ridge this year, hey, we're gonna take you guys from the classification that you've been playing all year and your chance of winning a state championship and putting you at the 5A level here, or the open bracket.
With that, what's the end? Do they know at the beginning of the season, or is it as at the end where the top max preps 18
Right.
are now in open division?
I would assume it's a end of the year decision, but also as you're talking about open number teams or whatever, I would feel like that would be a smaller bracket, right? Because you still have your 5A, your 4A, 3A brackets. So you're looking at some sort of a bye week in there before you kick off an open.
Well, I mean, if you have an 18 bracket, you're looking at 2 buys, probably the way the current structure is. So is that too disjointed of a playoff? Or do you play that over Thanksgiving weekend, as well? So, yeah. Well, I appreciate the feedback. I think it's something that, as you're driving back to all your places and thinking about, football moving forward, just give it some thought and maybe talk with your coaches and community and just get some thoughts. I'd love to hear the feedback for that. So, thank you.
We have the 2 additions.
Yep.
Yes, we've just, at least over on the western slope, we've seen schools that have dropped their programs multiple times over the last 5 years. And the negative impact that has on the teams that they're supposed to schedule, trying to fill those games. And if there's a process that we could come up with to help them build their program and then eventually work towards varsity competition again, instead of just in and out every year, not knowing if they're going to be able to be there or not be there. Is my thought.
Jeremy, what do you think the new league structure with the multi-class, do you think that would will alleviate some of these schools if we are able to, my thought is some of the 2A schools that are maybe, would be more competitive in a 1A league. Are those typically the schools you're thinking of, or we did add that independent league as well.
I think some of that's going to help. I think, it's the issue that we have going both ways. If you have a school that wants to play 11-man and they don't want to go to 8-man, but they can't field an 11-man team. And I know that's a community school decision. But I think the independent that was created with those schools, I think that's a good move. They can still have varsity games and they can still choose to do that and have that experience. And that might help. I still see some issues with 1A, at least on the western slope. We got one school on there that's played twice in 5 years. And I don't think they're gonna be able to play this year either.
So are you thinking more along the lines of okay, we started a new cycle. A school's in a league. If they are unable to finish the season, they are mandated to go independent, or I know the tricky part is that scheduling for next year, and everyone's gonna try and get that school back, or that school's gonna try and get a program back. I think there's a fine balance between helping them out, or, are we squashing them by, removing any options?
I agree, and there is that balance. Is it, they finish that year with like an independent, I think could be an option. Do they run a JV schedule or an independent for the rest of that cycle and show that they have X amount of kids out? The problem with a lot of those, you've got seniors that want to play varsity, so they're not going to play for the school, so they're going to go down the road or to the next district. So the problem is they never get to build that up because their older players aren't playing there. I just wanted to bring it, to the committee to see, your guys' thoughts on that. I mean, is there a viable solution, or is it something that it is what it is and we just need to try to work it the best we can?
A possibility they have to go on probation if you have to cancel a season, something along those lines. The hard part is if it's mid-cycle. That's where we had it where I spent 2 weeks of my summer trying to rebuild the whole schedule because they called me in the middle of summer and they weren't gonna have enough. And it was our homecoming game. I mean, it's a domino effect, and it really does affect not just that school. So I think the one trick is the middle of a cycle situation. But I think if you're at that point, you either have to drop a classification, there should be some kind of process or some kind of consequence, because it just feels like a lot of these schools are coming in and out, and it just affects so many.
I think if there were a consequence in terms of going on a probation or something like that, it would need to be a bylaw proposal. Bylaw proposal came from a league, it's certainly something we could look at. I do think there are situations in, I know 6-man and 8-man, and John and Lon can speak a little bit more to this, where there is a big difference between 1 year and the next year, where you 1 year I might not have a team, but the next year, my junior high's got 8 boys coming in or 6 boys coming in that I know will be on the team that'll help out. So also want to be able to give those schools that opportunity. So is there an appeal process, or what does that look like, I guess? Yeah.
This is just discussion, it's not a proposal, obviously. But to Jeremy's point, what happens is if I cancel my varsity season, then that gives those juniors and seniors an opportunity to go play at a different school. And so now I'm just gonna use an example. Now Roaring Fork cancels their thing. Now they all go play at Glenwood. Glenwood's very successful, or Basalt's very successful because those kids go and play there. Now those kids taste that success. In order for them to come back to Roaring Fork to rebuild that program, how do you, there's gotta be some kind of a process there that maybe, so instead of saying you just cancel their season, then they have to either play down or they have to go play independent. And then those kids stay in that school and they're still getting to play a varsity experience. Maybe that would keep those kids at that school playing there long term. So maybe that's some, just, I would like to have other people's opinion, but something along those lines, maybe, where you can't just cancel your season, you have to go play independent, or you have to move down, but then that changes the lower classification too. Because then that's a domino effect that way.
So in 6-man, we had an instance with this a couple years ago. A school was unable to field a team just due to lack of numbers. They were expecting numbers, and then first day of practice showed up and they just didn't have kids to field a team. So everybody tries to give it as much advance notice as possible, but like you all know, you're always hoping you're going to have a team, so you want to hold off as long as you can. Now, in that case, that was year 1 of the cycle. Um, everybody was able to work their schedules, fill spots, according to buys, things like that. But then the next year, that school had, they had enough numbers, but those schools that rescheduled in place of them canceling their season last minute, I was one of them. I gave my word to the school that we played in year one of that cycle that we would run it back and play it the next year just for home and away purposes. And, a lot of other athletic directors in our conference did the same thing. And that was understood by the school that canceled their season last minute, but then they re-upped on the next cycle. And so those kids did end up going to a neighboring school district so they could participate in football.
I think to me, there's two different situations. There's teams that, it's the 1 year thing. You got two small classes. And then there's the other situation where it's programs that this has been happening for 5, 6 years. And how do we deal with that? I know it's something that we've talked about, in this committee before. Is it worth getting, some people together outside of the, committee and, getting an email thread and start passing ideas around? It obviously, I think anybody here just wants to keep passing it along.
I think some of it will really help to have mixed classification leagues for Salida, for some of these 2A schools at Jefferson that have that play down, but not just play down, but now get to be placed into a league and have a chance for some success. I think that's going to help. And then obviously if it's mid-cycle, it's like they're going to have to basically play year 2 as independent and try to play those league games if somebody will play them. But if somebody already rescheduled because they canceled year 1, that's the way it's going to be. And then I think it's our job as a football committee to look at those schools, and we know who they are and they know who they are, and see if we can place some like schools together, which I think we've done in some leagues. And then also, hey, you've struggled 3 out of the past 4 years. Maybe you should be independent this year. Try to pick up your former league games. I think there's a multifaceted solution that we've taken steps to rectify that. And it's always going to be hard when you have small numbers. The person canceling the program doesn't feel good about it. So it's a challenge, but I think we've done some things with mixed classification, with putting people as independent and then playing the second year as an independent in the cycle. I've seen few teams go to JV. I think that has mixed success. I think it'd be better to play an independent schedule of like teams that you don't have playoff implications. I know Sheridan went to JV last year and they're like, they whooped our JV team with a bunch of seniors. It was a bad match for both of us. And then Jefferson did independent or whatever, and or Pinnacle, and that seemed to be a better fit for them. So I think that's an option.
I think geography really comes into play here, right? So to say to a school, and again, I don't know the specifics, but let's just use Roaring Fork and say, I mean, do you just say to Roaring Fork, they're not canceling their season because they want to, right? They're not doing it by essentially the choice has been made for them by lack of number of participation and injury and the things that come on through the course of a season. Because I think that's the intention always coming in is we're going to be able to fulfill our schedule. We're going to be able to do it. So I don't know if saying to them, just my thought that I don't think like saying, hey, you're going on probation because you let a couple of schools down based on not being able to fulfill your schedule. Because they don't want to do that either. They don't want that for their kids. They don't want that for their community. That's really hard for them. I do look at it and say, what is the option of like, hey, we're going to try and make you play down? Because that all of a sudden changes things when you're talking that geography as well. Like you're saying to them, or to say you're independent. Well, all of a sudden your independent schedule all rests in the Denver metro, and then it's them out there. I don't think anybody's looking at that and saying that's a great, fix for that problem either. It's just multifaceted, and again, how to build those communities up. I think we're taking a step with this multi-classification league opportunity for people. And John did a great job of getting the schools to do independent level and kind of play amongst themselves and try and kind of right their own ship in a way to get strong enough to get back into leagues where they belong. So I hope the process plays out like that you foresaw and that people foresee. And again, those rural communities, that's really, really challenging. And I don't think this is a new problem. It's existed for a while now. But I don't know if probationary status or just saying, hey, you're on restriction now, you have to go down is also the right solution for them.
Agreed. Maybe that word wasn't the right word, but I do, just talking it out loud and the comments that were made, a lot of times that's what happens. So they cancel, if it's the first year of the cycle, they cancel, everybody fills their schedule and makes commitments. So then when that team comes back, so maybe that would be the solution is if you cancel in that first year, if you can get a varsity team the second year, you have to play an independent league. Yes, it might be more travel, but it's still a varsity experience. Then that way, everybody who's filled their schedules, they don't have to go back and everybody's trying to rebuild again a second time. Cause that's part of the issue is like they were talking about on the call in was everybody adjusts and then they come back and now everybody has to readjust a second time. And that's difficult because then you lose home games or you lose away game. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of fallout from that.
Or they drop the first year of the cycle. They come back the second year and everybody readjusts and then they drop again the second year of the cycle. And it's multiple years in a row.
One thing that hasn't been co-op, the best answer that struggling with that student population is that an option and I don't know all the rules on the co-ops and all that, but
Yeah, the co-ops are tricky just because there's a geographic component to it. So I can't just say Vista Ridge is gonna co-op with Ray when there's 30 schools in between. So it becomes a little bit of certain set of rules they need to follow for that too. Yeah.
There's some of these conversations. Forfeiting ideas in place, but then is this similar to dropping the program for a full year, or is it? Are we dealing with two different things, or is it actually the same thing? I guess is my question, because we have some stuff in place for forfeits now. But are those need to be adjusted, and then is it the same for when they drop the program?
So they're dropping because if they drop their program, then those seniors will go to a neighboring school. If they don't drop it, then, and just forfeit, then those kids are losing out on that opportunity. That's the conversation I had with one AD when they dropped their program is I'm dropping my program because then my seniors, which one of them was their child, could go play varsity at another school.
You have an answer? Great discussion, and I think it could be something where I would look forward to a proposal coming from a league or something like that we could sink our teeth into a little bit more, because I think there are some options. I don't know if there's ever gonna be a perfect option, because every situation's a bit nuanced, but.
I think a good idea for a proposal in the future is, I mean, if you're not going to be able to field a team and you drop your season year one of the cycle, it might be something to consider. It takes you out for the entirety of the cycle, just to keep the integrity amongst other schools that are trying to keep their schedules full. So there's no hard feelings about somebody traveling one year and then just dropping them the next. Now, if somebody has a team for the first year of the cycle and they end up canceling the second year, then it's kind of a tough loss. And it would be the understanding of schools that are trying to fill that slot that, hey, let's play. And I'm also going to understand that I'm probably gonna have to travel and not see you back the next year, or vice versa.
Any other discussion? Thank you. We'll move to the next one. Tiebreakers for leagues.
Yeah, sorry, I just, again, I'd like to be as consistent and uniform as possible as we can be across the strata here with this. I think it's important that there's some uniformity in that so that there's not and I know these leagues are made up of, can be multi districts in a lot of ways to make these all happen. What does that look like? And that obviously head to head's pretty easy, but they're usually three-way ties, right? And what does a three-way tie process look like? And can we get a uniform kind of criteria? Like what is that? What does that seem to be that would push people upward? Especially when you're talking league champion makes the bracket. And others may not. If you're talking to 2014, they may not, 2 and 3 may not make, have something consistent. Unstable.
So right now, what I've seen the most, and you all are in different leagues and you could help out. When I see three-way ties, I see two main items in terms of tiebreakers. I think the one that involves the least amount of thinking is whatever your seating and selection index has as one. That would be 1, 2, and 3, and so on. After the head-to-head has been looked at. Okay. The other thing that I see often from from leagues is a cap. Some leagues have a negative with it. You lose points. Some leagues you don't have negative points. You just get 0, and you only get positive points by the point differential when you win. So those are the ones that I see the most.
I think for our league, we have a head-to-head, obviously, and then amongst the tied teams is your point differential only against each other.
Right.
And so I think that's the most localized thing that you could do. You start going to CHSAA index or the max press rankings, like who would I able to play in Wisconsin, like you're trying to become a league champion within the league, playing league opponents. I think that's why we allow leagues to determine what their qualifications and the tiebreaker features are. I can't remember the cap is either 21 or 28 points, something where you're not worried about the
Running up the
sportsmanship, and it's plus for your win. So you might be a -8 in one game and a +14, you're at a 6, and we've had it tied almost every single year. And then if they're still tied, then it goes to the max prep rating. So we haven't had an issue where it's been pretty like, okay, yeah, we lost one versus that team. That makes sense. So that hasn't been a big issue.
That's the only bad thing I agree with you on the max preps ranking, because it also brings in their non-league stuff on that ranking. So that's the only thing that when you're trying to win a league champion, it should be compared against league championship teams.
Want to suggest a recommendation, Mike?
Just that everybody does exactly what they want. I think maybe you can let this play out. Maybe you look at it 2 years down the road and you say, okay, we've come up upon this a number of times now where there's three-way ties, and it's been, again, it won't fall back on us. It'll kind of fall back on you, right? Like saying the state, like man, that's not because the complaining is going to come back to you. It probably won't come back to their league. It'll come back to the state and saying that was unfair. Our school got unjustly penalized because of, we had 60-mile-an-hour winds, and we only 1-7-6 or whatever, and the point differential didn't end up putting us as the number one seed. I do like the max prep part of it, because I do think that does bring a mathematical part to where it's just like, hey, this is what it is. There's 3 teams tied. If head to head doesn't do it, then we go from there. And usually it doesn't, right? And the 3-way ties, they've each beat each other. And but maybe the math number is just the right way. You just do the point differential. So I don't have a proposal, John.
I would say this, Mike, just from my seat, this was the 4th football season I've been involved in. I haven't had to deal with the tiebreaker yet. The leagues have kind of done their own thing, and I have never had someone. I did ask in the email that I sent out for the leagues, as part of the steps to complete, to make sure that the leagues had their bylaws, which obviously should include that with all conference stuff as well. But yeah.
Would you like to review the 2025 season?
Well, this is the official end of the 2025 season, so a couple items that I just wanted to go over this year. We did add the heat acclimatization piece to to the requirement for coaches. Got some positive feedback from that. Just a reminder that coaches need to do that one time in their coaching career. It's totally up to school leadership if you'd like your coaches to watch it annually. It would be available. So if you have new coaches next year, they should be watching it, irrelevant of the level that they will be participating in coaching in. So with that heat acclimatization piece, we moved up the season a week. We added another option to scrimmages. So there were 2 scrimmage dates that a school could have, even though you can only scrimmage once. Got some positive feedback on that as well. In terms of the regular season, really did not have any major issues all regular season, in terms of consistent items that were occurring around the state. So nothing to report there. Postseason, again, no issues in the postseason. So had a really good season that way. I did include the ejection totals for this year on the document that you have, just so you can be aware. So this year we had 127 players ejected. 7 coaches, and then I put our main reasons for the ejections. So I shouldn't say, slightly under half of the ejections were from fighting. Don't know if that new video appeal bylaw will help alleviate that or not, but those are the totals. So slight uptick from last year in terms of the number of kids that were ejected. But other than that, thank you all for everything you've done to help out with the committee, and thanks for a great season.
Moved by Mike,
Eddie and Mike.
Thank you, everybody. What do you guys do for football camp in the summer? What do you guys do for football camp in the summer?
you know what, last 7 years, we do nothing. went ahead and said to go to five. We used to go to two fans for all this. You do any paddle period or do you know, football coach will reach out for and we take it all out. Take that over. So we just give them their time. We used to.
As far as the schedule. Sorry, short. I'm always there's a few that have gone. These are short. Football is very sport. I don't think, and the risk. If we want to better, and then drop off. It's so drastic. I mean, we're like, our quarterback didn't practice at all. We're trying to be our team quarterbacks. I mean, like, we're playing older so that we can get the JP experience. Maybe trying to practice a wide receiver. I mean, it's for reaching out. So, yeah, I think what we're going to do is you got 3 weeks of practice, but that's what I was trying to say. Right after they listen, it's just use. Just 7 it's just like, I think close paper, but we don't need to see them. We're not, we're gonna have all let's just make it, that's not just all. That's what we just, you did 7 on 7 versus like. It's all out here. He's gonna be playing something baseball games. He's gonna be out I don't understand why everyone wanted to. Two-way player. And then you can take your time with like side. And then next thing you know, that's the way to second of them already have blue cars. They're get much experience. Elliot, I need you to help me find games for everybody. Not everybody. Sometimes takes us 3 years. That doesn't mean so be. Well, the whole one reached out when I had openings, so you're trying to do that.
Or